Welcome to our series, Recovery Happens in Mental Health. This is our third session out of 10. Today we're going to talk to two people who are both recovering from schizophrenia, Mauricio and Kevin. And I think you're going to find their stories very interesting. They're going to tell you about the steps to recovery, how they manage their triggers. A lot of people believe that people with mental illness cannot recover, but we want you to know that there is hope out there and that people living with mental illness do recover. Mauricio has been living with schizophrenia for 13 years and a specific type that he'll tell you about. And as we talked about, there are people who feel that people with mental illness cannot recover, but we want you to know that that is not true. We want you to know that people living with mental illnesses do recover and that there is hope out there. And Mauricio is going to tell you a little bit about his story. And I was wondering, thank you again for coming, and I was wondering if you could start by telling me, when did you realize that something was different or something was wrong, or did you realize that? And what did you do? What feelings were you having?
Well, I'm 30 now, and when I was 17, which was 13 years ago, I think, I used to live a normal life. I'd go outside and play with my friends, we'd hang out, and everything was normal. And I used to use drugs, and it happened when I was 17. One day I was hanging out with my friends, and then I just got this paranoid feeling. And the next day it was just weird. It was different. It was like, that's when I noticed that there was something wrong with me. So I was at a school at the time, living on a campus, and I remember I had to call my mom and tell her that I couldn't stay there anymore, that I needed to come home because my mind was just different. Something had happened to me, a huge change. And
can you tell me specifically what were some of the feelings that you were feeling at that time?
Just very scared, paranoid. I thought that people around me were plotting on me. I thought that they were out to get me, like they were planning to rob me that night. And none of that was true. And I remember going to the hospital that night, and they just let me sleep there at the hospital, and I woke up the next day and everything was different.
Different in what way?
The whole perception, like I just felt my mood wasn't happy. I was upset, and I felt as if it was a new day, but it wasn't the same. It was just a dark day. It was very, like, everyone was watching me, and they knew what had just happened to me, and it was like the people around me were just staring at me, which wasn't really happening. It was
Take me to the point when you actually get a diagnosis and someone says, what is it that you have? Tell us, and then what did that mean to you?
Well, when I came home from this school, I separated myself from my friends. I didn't call any of my friends to tell them, hey, I'm back, let's hang out, let's party, let's have fun. And I just wanted to be alone. I wanted to seclude myself and withdraw from society and just sleep all day. And that's what happened when I was 17. I would just sleep all day, and I'd be up at night sometimes, couldn't sleep, and I would just stay at home. And that's when I realized, and I told my mom, again, I was 17, I'm 30 now. I told my mom, I think there's something wrong with me. I think I need to see a psychiatrist. But that day, I told my mom I need to see a psychiatrist. So we went to this doctor, Dr. Campbell, and I told him what I was going through, what I felt, what I did, the drugs I used, and I went in there with the thought that I had depression. And then he asked me, the doctor asked me a couple more questions, and I told him about the paranoia, and he was like, okay, that's when he diagnosed me schizoaffective, which is schizophrenia with like a bipolar type with a mood disorder. Mm-hmm. And he gave me some antipsychotics. 2 years ago was when they finally got the right combination of medications for me. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel too sedated. Mm-hmm. And I feel like life's better now. Like, I can go out and like not have a fear people are plotting on me, and it's taken a lot of the paranoia away, and it's given me like a lot of hope and like a lot of like it's good because like this has just happened 2 years ago, and they finally got the right medications, and I'm taking the right combinations of medications.
Okay. I think the key takeaway here is that it is a journey, and you noticed and your family noticed that you had been in isolation, that you were isolating yourself from things, you were nervous, and you went through this journey of talking to healthcare experts and professionals, and you played a role in saying this is not working. You had some kind of treatment, medical treatment, and that wasn't working, so you went back. You played a role in that, right, in getting yourself on the right meds.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you're feeling now and what your outlook is now compared to back then.
Now, I see my life, and I think I'm at a point where I need to make some decisions, important decisions. I would love to have a family and have some kids, maybe. And that's not impossible. Even if you have mental illness, I know you can still do that. You gotta be on your medications, and like you gotta stay on your meds, and like feel like you're on a path of recovery, and you feel like you're able to, be stable, have stability. But yeah.
And so, and you've really felt that way and that stability for at least 2 years.
2 years now, almost. It's still a struggle.
How do you manage that now? So if that feeling starts to come over you, what steps do you take to?
And just the other day, I realized, while I'm getting paranoid, like the other day I was getting paranoid, and I said, this is gonna last like maybe 2, 3, 4 hours, and life still goes on. I'm still alive, and this is gonna happen for 4 hours. But when it subsides and it's over, I'm still gonna be breathing, and that gave me hope to think, life still goes on, and I can go through this. But all I have to do is be able to manage it and say in my head and kind of focus, like if I'm at work or something that happens, think it's only going to last a couple hours, and I can go through it because I'm going to be alive in 4 hours.
So imagine that you met someone who was going to go through, or who was going through what you were going through,
Yeah.
at that time, before the diagnosis, and they come up to you and they say, I don't know what's going on with me, but I'm feeling paranoid, I'm isolated, I don't want to leave my room. What advice would you give them about how to take those first steps toward recovery?
And the person, I would just tell them, you gotta personally, like yourself, you need to check yourself and like make a huge change in your life depending on what they're involved in, and change your friends, change your your whole habits, and focus on getting healthy, because to take their medications, see a psychiatrist, that it's not a bad thing to go see a mental health professional. They're there to help you, and with their help and a therapist, they can get well.
Very good. Do you recall people wondering or questioning, oh gosh, you see someone, you have to see a therapist, does that mean you're weak or something like that? Do people do that still? Do you think that some people don't go see a therapist because they're worried what others might think?
Yeah. I was at the Ferlazo building where my psychiatrist is at, and there was a person that was seeking help for counseling. I think it was for their marriage, and they told them this is a mental health place, and they were like, no, we're not mental, so I'm thinking people out there think mental health means you're mentally, you're mental, and
in a bad way.
In a bad way, like it's not something that you want to have in your life, because it's a lifetime process. It's like having diabetes. You're gonna have it all your life. It's like having HIV or whatever.
Right. And I think that one of the things that I've learned from you is that you are positive. You tell me life is worth living. There are good things to go on. So that's certainly something you would share with this person that you met, right?
But yeah, I mean, life would be the same. The only thing is, you have this issue where your mind is just imbalanced. You know, like if it's a mood disorder like bipolar, you know, you're going to be sad more often than a regular person, and are you going to be too excited? That life is the same. It's just all you have to do is just take, you know, take some medication, you know, or go to therapy, or go to some groups, and you have to do some of those steps. I have some friends that are, you know, mentally ill, and I have some other friends that aren't, and everyone, I share my story with them. I tell them, I'm not afraid to tell people, you know, I take medication. It's hard to say I have schizophrenia, because just that word is terrifying. It's like, you have what? You know, schizophrenia? And, but I tell my friends that, and they know that I struggle with this, and they know that I can't drink or do drugs, and they back me up with that. You know, they support me.
That's right. Kevin's going to tell us a little bit about his recovery and his coping skills and his life as someone who is living with schizophrenia but is recovering from a schizoid affective disorder. He is working. He's been in the same job since, I think, 2007, I believe that's right.
Yes.
He's been married 21 years. He has a beautiful daughter who is excelling in high school. So, welcome, Kevin. And I think one of the coolest things that I wanted you to start with is if you could describe how you think about mental illness.
I think mental illness is an illness that affects us in different ways. And myself, it affects me, my thinking and my judgment at times, and my mood and feelings I have. But in general, I think recovering from mental illness is like a stool with many legs. You can have more than 4 legs. You can have 7, 8, 9. That includes like your family support, your psychiatrist, your medication, your family, exercise, good diet. All the things help to keep myself stable, and I feel other people benefited from some of this. My first diagnosis with schizophrenia came when I was 21 years old, and now I'm 50, and so that was 1986. And I had paranoid delusions and excess energy, and kind of I felt, you know, sort of a rage and a very, very, you know, not in control of myself at the time. So I had to go in the hospital for 3 months at the time.
What was that, when you first got that diagnosis, what were you feeling?
I really felt, I really felt horrible. You know, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It was, you know, something that I didn't know how to get a handle on or get control of, and I didn't know about medications and things that they would try or do. I didn't know anything about how to get to the other side of the.
Did you have a sense of hopelessness?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you're managing and recovering through your mental illness, how you're doing that now, and what you've learned in the recovery versus before.
I've learned that you have to stay stable on the medications that you're given. I went on a lower dosage back in, I'd say, December of last year, and I had a relapse back in March.
You said you had a bit of a relapse. Describe what a bit of a relapse means, and how you work through that.
I had some kind of paranoid thinking. I had too much energy. I wasn't able to calm myself down. I had intrusive thoughts. I had just generalized anxiety and not being able to focus as well as I normally do, and just not out of my own, out of the realm that I'm normally in.
Did you recognize that these things were happening?
Yes, I did.
So what did you do then?
I talked to my doctor and therapist and my boss at work, and I talked, I kept the communication open with my wife and stuff, and I used all my resources, my family and friends, and in my therapies. And I saw my therapist more on a regular basis, checked in with her at least once a week, and kept a little bit of a journal to how I was doing, kept an idea on how things were tracking.
All right. I think one of the important takeaways is that you recognize that you have all these different legs of the stool that are needed, and it's for a balance in a way. And when you felt some of those legs were a little off balance, you knew how to get back that balance.
I did, but
And do you feel like you're back on track now?
Yes, I do.
And what are the characteristics of being on track?
Things are flowing good in my life, at home and at work and with friends. I'm able to do many things that I can take on more stress at this time. Dealing with things, I think I deal with them pretty well, and just things are just going in the right direction for me. It seems like every part of my life I'm able to see is going forward.
What kind of advice would you give to families who have someone in their family who is living with the mental illness?
It's important to, if you're in the state that I was in when I was like 21, to get treatment and start on that as soon as possible, because the quicker that you get onto the medications or the therapies and get your coping skills together, the better off you'll be, and you can learn a lot about mental illness by researching it through NAMI or other organizations that you can find online or in books and even in the library written about people.
And for folks who don't know what NAMI is, it is
National Alliance for the Mentally Ill.
Okay. Well, one of the things that people worry about is, and you see headlines. So if someone has a mental illness, they might be dangerous. I'm worried. That's really a misperception. Tell me the reality.
The reality is the person is dealing with stuff within themselves. They're not out to hurt someone else. They're not knowing what's going on with themselves, and they really are vulnerable, and they really need help, and to be in a safe place. And the statistics are that people with mental illness are more, either a victim of crime or and not out to harm other people.
What would you tell people who are out there and have these stigmas, misperceptions about mental illness?
It is recoverable, and it is something that affects about 25% of the people, and sometime in their lifetime will have a mental illness that they'll go through, rather than if that be just a temporary setback or something more severe.
What would be your wish for how the public in general and even the media would cover this?
That they talk to people that are like Patty Duke, who's a famous actress that has mental illness, and others, people out there that are outspoken and talk about it, to understand it from that perspective, and not the perspective of a crime statistic.
So the human aspect, to understand, look, we have jobs, we have families, and every one of us has something that may be a little imbalanced, and we fix it.
there's
Mhm.
diabetes, we use insulin. Yeah. If our eyesight's going a little bad, we wear glasses. And if there's a chemical imbalance on this part of our brain, we can fix that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Am I doing that right?
Yes.